Hello everyone, good morning again. Welcome to today's webinar on how to use Fiddler to remotely diagnose customer issues. Before we get started, let's do a quick sound check. If you have joined through your phone, I would recommend you to switch to computer because we've seen few issues while connecting from phone. If you still can't hear me, please try restarting GoToWebinar Viewer. Or if you have other audio or video problems, don't worry. We'll send you a link to the recording soon after the webinar. If you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them using the questions section in GoToWebinar Viewer. Experts from our team will answer your questions, or I can take them up in the end. And to make this webinar more engaging, I'll be conducting a few polls at the end of the webinar. They will show up on your screen once I enable them. You can respond to them by selecting the options presented on the screen. Finally, we're all working from home, and we apologize in advance for any inconvenience caused because of the network connectivity or any other issue. In case I get disconnected, one of my colleagues will take over. And I'm your host for today. My name is Nishal Reddy. I'm the product manager for Fiddler. I lead the new growth initiatives at Progress and have experience working in different product functions like engineering and product management. And in my free time, I like to travel. While traveling, I love to explore new local cuisines. So just a disclaimer before we get started with the webinar. I'll be showing you some snapshots of a pre-release software which could potentially change by the time it is released. With that said, let's see the agenda for today's webinar. In today's webinar, we will briefly touch upon how customer issues are debugged today, and then we'll see in detail how Fiddler and its suite of tools can be used to debug customer issues. Followed by that, I'll walk you through a small demo on how you can use these tools in your workflow. Finally, I'll give you a sneak peek into what's coming up next for FiddlerCap. So let's get started with how customer issues are currently debugged. Typically, when a customer experiences an issue, he will log a support ticket, and hopefully he will add all the steps required to reproduce the issue, which tech support will use as a starting point to reproduce and troubleshoot the issue. This will be complemented by analyzing server logs and, depending on the type of application, client logs as well. Sometimes support might hop on a call with customer or do screen sharing session to better understand how and when the issue is occurring. While all these steps are useful and necessary in troubleshooting any customer issue, another popular way of easily isolating a customer issue is by analyzing HTTP network logs. In this webinar, we will deep dive into why we should start with network logs, and then we'll also look at different options to capture and analyze these logs. First, what are HTTP logs, or what are HTTP network logs? Any application, be it web, mobile, or client application that works on web uses HTTP protocols for communication. The clients will make requests for data through network APIs in form of HTTP requests, and the server responds with a response, which will be consumed by the client to display the information to the user. HTTP network logs are a collection of all the requests response along with the nitty-gritty details of things like headers, content, and every detailed information that client requested from the server. But why do we need HTTP network logs? Why do we have to capture this to debug any customer issue? Because, simply put, they speak the truth. Because they are the single source of truth that captures every request that went from client and every response that was received from a server. And typically, when customer experiences issues while using the application, and capturing the logs at the source when the issue is happening is valuable information to troubleshoot issues faster. And it is the easiest way to isolate the problem and point out the exact API or service that is causing the issue. But how can we collect HTTP logs? There are a lot of ways to do it. Let's look at two most popular ways. First is through browser debug tools that will let users record and save the HTTP logs. And the second is through web debug proxy tools, which are debug tools specially built to capture and debug HTTP logs. Let's first look at how we can use browser debug tools to capture HTTPS logs. So all major browsers comes with debug tools built in. We can use these tools to capture HTTP traffic, and then once it is captured, we can export it as a HTTP archive file or simply put har file. And then these har files can be opened in browser tools or har viewers or even in web proxy tools, which we'll see in a minute. Now, before we get into the web debug proxy tools, let's see what are the pros and cons with browser debug tools. So a really nice thing about browser debug tools are they are ubiquitous. If there is a browser, then very likely that there is a built-in tool to capture these logs. But the drawbacks include it can be used to capture traffic for standalone applications or mobile apps, and they can only be used for capturing traffic in browsers. And since it captures HTTP requests, it may contain sensitive data. And once this information is captured in logs, there is a chance that they could fall in the wrong hands. And the most important of all is there is no proper tool chain for the whole life cycle of what happens after the logs are shared with support or development teams. Everything is currently manual and ad hoc. Now let's look at the web debug proxy tools. So let's first look at how web debug proxy tools work. As we have seen, this is typically how HTTP communication happens. Clients use APIs to make requests which go through internet and then the response is returned by the server. Web proxy, web debug proxies work on the principle of the man in the middle. So the web debug proxy is configured to sit in between your client and your external network. So any request that is made from your client will go through the intermediate web proxy to the backend server. And the responses are returned by the server will also be sent via proxy. This will open up for some pretty interesting possibilities. Since the web proxy can capture any traffic that goes through it, they can also provide some nifty capabilities that will not only let us sniff the traffic, but also modify, manipulate, and mock the requests and responses. These are particularly pretty valuable when doing testing, development, or debugging issues. And Fiddler is one such web debug proxy tool. Fiddler lets you capture all HTTP traffic between your computer and the internet. It will also let you inspect traffic, test requests, and manipulate requests and responses. And this is the brief history of Fiddler. The first version of Fiddler was released in 2003, and for the next decade, it was the most popular and de facto tool for. It was a de facto web proxy tool. And I can't stress enough on how Eric Lawrence has built a great tool and most importantly, a great community around Fiddler over the next decade. And then Telerik acquired Fiddler in 2012 and continued to offer Fiddler through its portfolio of products. And in 2014, Progress acquired Telerik, and along with all the products and offerings of Telerik. And since then, Fiddler team has been adding features and has been doing regular releases. And in 2019, we released a first version of Fiddler Everywhere, which supported Windows, Mac, and Linux. And then in late 2019, we've been working on completely revamping Fiddler Everywhere from the past 6 months. And we've been reaching out to users for feedback to understand how our users are using the product and how we can improve Fiddler to suit to your needs. And the feedback so far has been very phenomenal and interesting. And we have recently released a public beta version of Fiddler Everywhere. And if you have not used it, I highly recommend you to download and give it a try. And in this webinar, I would be using Fiddler Everywhere in my slides as well as in the demos. But before we take a look at Fiddler Everywhere on how we can use it for debugging customer issues, let's see how is it currently being used. So these are some of the common use cases, and this was largely derived from the research we have conducted in the past couple of months. And a large percentage of our user base are currently using Fiddler for debugging applications. And apart from that, many of our users are also using it for API development and debugging. And we have also come across many users who use it for performance testing, malware analysis, security testing, and so on and so forth. In fact, there are some pretty interesting open source plugins built by our community for security and malware analysis. One such plugin is EKFiddle. So if you are into malware analysis, this is a very highly recommended plugin. I highly recommend you to go and test it out. Now let's see how Fiddler helps in debugging. First and foremost, with Fiddler, you can capture all the requests that go through your client application to the server. And then you can also inspect the headers of the request and responses, also the content and every nitty-gritty details of each request and response. You can also analyze the captured logs by setting filters. So let's say if you're looking for a specific pattern in the captured request, you can easily set filters to filter out and find out the request that you're looking for. And autoresponder is a unique feature that lets you mock requests. You can create rules to even mock live websites and apps. This is very useful feature for both development times and also for debugging issues and testing live websites. Finally, you can also edit and reissue any captured request, which can help you in testing the captured request by modifying headers or parameters. So these are some of the features that Fiddler Everywhere provides that can help you in capturing and debugging requests and responses. Now let's look at how Fiddler can be used to debug and troubleshoot customer issues. So this is a typical life cycle of for troubleshooting any customer issues. So the first and foremost is customer will experience an issue and he will report an issue by raising a support ticket with all the details about the problem he's experiencing. Support then tries to analyze the issue and provides more context to developers on the analysis they have performed. Developers will then try to perform in-depth analysis and will fix the issue. The life cycle is not unidirectional. Oftentimes, there will be a lot of back and forth in each step before the issue is resolved. So this is where Fiddler can help in reducing the overall turnaround and optimizing the workflow. So Fiddler has two main tools in its suite. One is Fiddler Everywhere or Fiddler Classic, which is the previous version of Fiddler Everywhere. So both these tools are the full-blown version of the actual web proxy tools used by developer and support teams. And then the next is FiddlerCap, which is a lightweight version used by customers to record the HTTPS logs. So let's first look at FiddlerCap. So FiddlerCap is a lightweight tool with less than 1 MB of footprint that lets customers capture HTTP logs with ease. So logs can be captured by simply clicking on start and then reproducing the issue and then clicking on stop. It will automatically capture all the traffic and it will also display the captured traffic so that users can look at what traffic is being captured. The captured traffic then can then be saved to the local disk and shared with the support teams by sending it through email or attaching it to support ticket. And then Fiddler also provides a host of other options for user to do things like exclude cookies and pause. Also provide It also provides a very useful option to set password protection, so the logs are encrypted. So let's say if you have any sensitive information, you can use password protection to encrypt those logs so that even if it falls in the wrong hands, they'll not be able to view the logs since they are encrypted. And it also has some useful flexibility to capture snapshots or screenshots, and users also can add comments. So once a customer shares the logs with the support team can then import these logs into Fiddler Everywhere to analyze these logs. They can add more context in the logs through highlighting requests or adding comments. And then they can also collaborate with development teams by sharing the requests with them. So development teams can then open the shared logs with just a click of a button. They'll be able to see all the context that support team has added through comments or request highlights, and they can further inspect the request response headers and test using Composer or create mock requests to do more complex analysis. So a simplified workflow with FiddlerCap is customer can capture logs using FiddlerCap. They can capture traffic, set password protection, and share logs with support team. And then support team will import these logs into their workspace and perform some kind of preliminary analysis and then shares the logs with development teams. Developers can see all the context that support team has added and can use Fiddler to perform in-depth analysis. So enough with the slides. Let's see a simple demo. So in this demo, we'll be using FiddlerCap to capture tools for a simple application. I'll be using a simple to-dos app. And then we'll see how we can open these captured logs inside Fiddler Everywhere. And then we'll show you how we can highlight requests and then add comments. And finally, I will also demonstrate how you can share these logs with your team. So let's get started with the demo. All right, let's start by downloading the FiddlerCap tool. To download FiddlerCap tool, you can visit the fiddlercap.com URL. And if any of your customers are facing issues, you should just point them to this URL, which has all the instructions to download FiddlerCap, as well as a detailed step-by-step guide to help them capture the traffic. So let's download and install the FiddlerCap tool. So it's pretty lightweight. It has a very small footprint. It's less than 1 MB. So let me install it by running the installer. Let's say install. All right, it has finished installation. So now I'll launch FiddlerCap. If you look at the interface, it is pretty minimal. It has very few options to start capture, and then you have to first start capturing, and then you can reproduce the issue that you're facing, and then you can stop capture and then save it onto your local disk. You can then use that log file either to attach it in a support ticket, or you can also send it to support through an email. So let's capture traffic for a simple website and see how it works. So to capture traffic, the first step we have to do is click on Start Capture. And now let's open progress.com website. It has currently started capturing logs. So let's open a website. Now if you switch to FiddlerCap, it will show you the number of captured sessions. So if you click on the Details tab, it will show you all the details of the requests and responses it captured. Now let's stop capturing. Now you'll be able to save these logs into your local disk. So to do that, let's click on Save Capture, and I'll save it in this document, and I'll give it a name saying, testing. Save it. Now you can use this log file. So it is called as a session archive file, or SAS file in short. You can use this SAS file. You can either attach it in support ticket or send it through email, and then support teams can import this log file into Fiddler Everywhere tool. All right, now FiddlerCap also provides some useful options. Let's look at these options in detail. So first are capturing options. So you have option to store binaries in any of the requests, and you also have an option to either store cookies or post requests. And you can also discard any traffic after certain time interval. So let's say if you're capturing traffic and you don't want to capture huge logs with huge size, you can set a time interval. And similarly, you have other options like clearing any cookies that were captured. You can clear the cache, and then you can also clear the capture itself. So let me just clear the currently captured sessions. And finally, these are pretty useful tools to add more context into the uh, logs. So for example, if the customer is trying to reproduce an issue and he wants to quickly add a screenshot, he can use this snapshot option to add any screenshots of the UI. So let's say if I want to take a screenshot of this website, let me just minimize this. I'll drag it down and then click on snapshot. So this will take a snapshot of the current screen. Similarly, you can also add comments by clicking on this option. So this can be used for adding more context. All right. So far, we've seen how you can use Fiddler to capture the network traffic. But if you observe closely, all the traffic that is currently captured is HTTP by default. It is not capturing any HTTPS traffic. So in order to capture HTTPS traffic, we have to enable a decrypt HTTPS traffic option. So let's see how to do that. So to decrypt HTTPS traffic, we first have to check this option, which will give us a prompt saying to capture HTTPS traffic, we have to trust and install root certificate. So I'll click on OK. This will give us a prompt for us to trust and install the root certificate. This is a one-time activity, so once you trust the certificate, you don't have to do it the next time. So this root certificate will be used by Fiddler Debug Proxy to uh, capture and decrypt any secure traffic that goes through the proxy. So I'll click on S to accept and install the certificate. Now, if you start capturing, so let's click on start capturing and let's open any website that uses secure traffic. Let's open progress.com. Now, if you go back to FiddlerCap, you can see that it has captured a lot more sessions than what it did before. And you can see that it has captured both HTTP and HTTPS traffic. So if you are trying to debug any real world applications, then it is very likely that it will be using HTTPS as a standard. So this option will be very useful, specifically when you're trying to capture logs in customer environment. All right, now let's take a small example application and see how we can use FiddlerCap to capture logs, and then let's see how the whole lifecycle works. So for an example, I'm going to take a to-do application. Let's say we have built a great to-dos application, and then our customer is trying to use it to create a groceries list, but he's running into some issue. So let's see how we can use FiddlerCap to capture logs and then share it with the support team. So let's say he's trying to create some groceries list like, buying bread, buying soda, and more stuff, right? But when he closes the application and opens it again, his list is gone. So none of his list is getting saved. So in this case, we can ask the customer to download FiddlerCap by pointing him to the FiddlerCap URL. And then it has all the required steps for him to capture logs and share it with the support team. Since I already have FiddlerCap installed, let me open that. All right. So now FiddlerCap can be used to quickly capture logs, reproduce the issue, and then share the captured logs with the support team. So to do that, users can click on Start Capture. So before doing that, we can select decrypt HTTPS traffic so that we can decrypt and we can capture all the HTTPS traffic that goes through this website. So I'll start capturing. And now I'll switch to the application. I'll try to reproduce the issue. So before reproducing the issue, I'll add a small comment so that it'll act as some context for whoever is trying to review these logs. So I'll just say starting reproducible steps. And now I'll go back to the application and I will reproduce the issue. I'll add some bunch of items in this to-dos list. And now I'll add one more comment saying, now if I refresh the list is gone, right? So now let's try to refresh this list and see what happens. Yep. So now we can also add a screen capture if that can provide more context. So to do that, we can click on the snapshot option here, which will take a screenshot of the current screen. And then user can also review the list of requests that were captured. And let me stop the capturing now. And now he can save the logs in his local disk by clicking on save option. And let me save it inside the FiddlerCap directory. I'll say to-dos list issue. Now let's switch to the directory. So this is the log that we have captured. It is called as a session archive file, or SAS file in short. This file can be shared with the support team either by attaching it to a support ticket or by sending it through an email. Now support team can download the log file and then they can open it in the Fiddler Everywhere tool. So let's see how it's done. So I'm going to switch to the Fiddler Everywhere tool here, and we can use the load archive option to load the log file into Fiddler. I'll click on this option and then I'll choose the directory here. It's under FiddlerCap. So it'll load the log file into Fiddler and it'll open in a new tab. You can also find the imported log files under saved sessions section. So now we can use this log file to analyze, find issues, and maybe add more comments. So let's start analyzing this issue. So as you can see that the user has added two comments. One is over here and the other is here. So we can view the comments by clicking on this option. So it says that he has started reproducing these steps. And then in the last comment, he's saying after he refreshes the issue, the list is gone. And we can also set filters on this log file. So let's say, let's simply set filters to find out all requests that have returned with internal error. So this will list all the list of sessions that return with 500 or server internal issue response. So now we can highlight this request by using the mark option. Let's say I want to mark it as orange. And then I can also add comments saying this looks like a cause for this issue. We can also look at the inspectors. We can also look at the request and response headers. So if you look at the response, we've got a 500 server internal response. And then if you look at the text response, it says the exact text that was written by the server. Similarly, we can also highlight other requests or add more comments and context into this log. So once support finishes analyzing the log, they can share this log file with development team. So the Fiddler Everywhere has collaboration built into it. So they no longer have to manually attach the log files to email or put it in some Dropbox. They can share it right from within the tool itself. So to do that, they have to click on the share option and enter the email ID with which they want to share this log file. So I'll say I'm going to share it with my development team. And I'll add some optional note saying, check out this to-dos list issue. And I'll click on share. So this will share the log file in our cloud storage, and it will give access to the only people with whom you have shared. You can also look at the users who have access to this log file by clicking on this manage users option. So currently only one user has access to this log file. And then the developer will get an email. So then he'll be able to click on the open in Fiddler option here to open this log file in Fiddler Everywhere. So let's open it in Fiddler. All right, so if you look, we have got a notification, and if I click on this, it will open the log file. And this log file will contain all the context that both the customer and support team has added. So the context is kind of preserved in the same log file. And if you look at all the requests, you can probably go through each comment and he can find the comment added by the support person, and he can further look at the request and response headers to nail down and find the problem. You can also use other advanced features like autoresponder to mock requests and simulate the issue, or composer to create and test requests. Or you can also use the captured requests to reissue them and change parameters and test how they perform. So probably we'll do a follow-up session for both autoresponder and composer to cover them in depth. So this is how Fiddler can be used to uh, optimize your whole workflow of capturing logs from customer and then providing more context to your support and development teams. So I'm done with my demo here. So let's switch back to the slides. All right, with this, I'm done with the demo. So you can download FiddlerCap and Fiddler Everywhere using the following links, or you can simply Google for FiddlerCap and Fiddler Everywhere, and then you'll be able to find them in the top results. But before we go, let's look at what's next for FiddlerCap. Although FiddlerCap solves the problem of capturing logs from the end customers, it still has few drawbacks. Let's look at them first. First and foremost is customers have to download yet another application, which many might not be comfortable with, and then they have to trust a root certificate, which many users might not have permissions to do. And then there is manual steps that users has to perform to attach logs or send them through email. Moreover, FiddlerCap captures all the traffic, which might add a lot of noise for support team to analyze. And finally, the whole experience for the customer is not optimal, and it has a lot of manual tasks that customer might not be comfortable or might not have necessary permissions to do. So we started speaking with our users to understand how we can solve this problem, and many of them have asked for one simple thing. They wanted to have a simple, easy, and secure way to capture logs from customers. So we started working on Fiddler Jam. Fiddler Jam is a troubleshooting solution for support and development teams that will let them troubleshoot customer issues in a fast, easy, and secure way. So let's see how it works and how is it different from FiddlerCap. So this solution aims to make the whole process of capturing logs super simple for the customer. So customers no longer have to download and install another app. They can simply add Fiddler Jam Chrome extension to the browser, and they don't have to trust any root certificate. So because Fiddler Jam can directly tap into Chrome debug infrastructure to capture any requests. It works in three simple steps. So the first step is customers have to add Chrome extension to the browser, and then they can capture traffic with simple start and stop. And they can also set password protection if they are concerned about the data that is captured. And they can optionally add any description and submit the captured logs. As soon as the logs are submitted, Fiddler Jam will generate a unique URL that can be shared with support and development teams. This will reduce a lot of steps for customers and makes it super easy to capture logs and share them with support teams without having to manually attach it to email or attach it to support ticket. Furthermore, since Fiddler Jam supports password protection, which will be used for encrypting any logs, he can be sure that his information is safe. And then support team can click on the shared URL and they can open that log in a web portal. They can view all the logs that were submitted in the web dashboard, and they can also do any analysis on the submitted logs. They can add comments, so on and so forth. So they don't have to download Fiddler to analyze the logs. They can do it right on the browser itself. And they also will have option to check out all the logs that were submitted in a dashboard. And they can also perform other things like adding more context like we just discussed. They can also further share this URL with development teams, and development team can further analyze these logs in the web dashboard, or they can also view any comments that were added by support team. But if developers want to do any in-depth analysis, they also have an option to open this log file in Fiddler Everywhere client so that it opens in the standalone client and they can do all the complex analysis that they would otherwise do in Fiddler Everywhere. So why Fiddler Jam? Fiddler Jam can help your customers submit logs in a self-service and in a super simple way. And then for support teams, they can collect logs and troubleshoot issue with less back and forth, which will result in shorter issue resolution times. And finally, for developers, they can analyze logs with all the context, which will help them reduce the overall turnaround time for issue resolution. So currently, Fiddler Jam is in closed beta stage. And if you're interested to try this solution out, we have created a program for you. It's called Fiddler Jam Pilot Program. So how does the pilot program work? So you can find a link in the chat through which you can schedule a call with our expert. Our expert will get in touch with you and he will walk you through the statement of work and any success criteria that we can define for the pilot. And you can work with our solution architecture team to implement Fiddler Jam pilot in your environment. You can test the solution for smooth functioning and capturing website logs, and you can test it in your staging environment. And then if you're comfortable with the solution, you can take it live and use it in your live environment. So if you're interested to try this solution out, I would highly recommend you to find the link in the chat. One of my colleagues would have pasted it, and you can schedule a call with us, and we will help you set up with the process. So with that, I'm done with today's webinar, and I can open up for any questions that you have.